Hey everybody, it's Peter and I'm filming here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's PowerSports, for the first time, not as someone who reviews their vehicles, but as an owner. I just bought this 2022 Kawasaki Z900RS SE. And this is going to become a regular piece of this channel. We're going to continue to go through it. So the first thing we're going to talk about in a future video is what it's like to be a customer here at Jim Gilbert's PowerSports, which is the #1 Kawasaki dealer in Canada. They are absolutely incredible. They are known as Canada's huggable car dealer. You talk about being customer focused, that's what they do, and now I'm a customer. So in a future video, we're gonna talk through what it's like to be a customer here, just so you see what that's like. But in this video, I'm gonna tell you sort of the journey I came to buying this bike, why I chose it over other ones, even though this was not originally what I thought would be my first choice, and maybe that'll just be something you can relate to, something you can think about when you buy your motorcycle, and I'll give you a couple tips and hints. I also put a few accessories on, there's another one to go, we'll talk about that. And like I said, we'll continue to return to this bike with rider reviews. I'm gonna do a trip on this, so we'll do a riding reviews on it. We're gonna do the entire trip, a really scenic trip, which I'll tell you about later. All kinds of things that are gonna be on this channel. We'll create a playlist of this bike, and if you're a fan of this bike or some of the stuff that we can do with this bike, then we'll do that. And if you have ideas of what I should do with it or that kind of thing, you can let me know. So let me know in the comments. Make sure you hit subscribe if you're a fan of this bike or what we should do with it. And yeah, let's get going. So in the first part, we're just gonna tell you about why I bought this bike. So whatever kind of motorcyclist you are, if you're not buying your very first bike, usually what happens when you come to buy a bike is you end up talking about the first bikes you've had. So this picture right there that I'm showing you is my first motorcycle. Now I started out on a scooter, but very quickly moved to this bike. That is a Honda CM250. It's a little 234cc twin cylinder Honda that had like 17 horsepower, and I did everything on it. To me, that's what motorcycling was. It was fun. I did like 7 and 8 hour highway trips on that thing, 2 ways. I did all kinds of stuff. I went camping on that. And to me, that's what motorcycling was as a kid. It was a kind of thing you could do absolutely everything on, and it was comfortable. What I didn't like about that bike is just turning around in intersections. I would be scraping the pegs and that kind of thing. It wasn't very sporty. So I don't have a picture of my second bike, but I'll throw a picture up of what my second bike was. It was my first Kawasaki. That was the Ninja 500. And what was missing from my first bike was the sporting capabilities that the Ninja brought in. Went on, had other bikes. I had my first 4-cylinder bike I drove was my dad's CB750 Nighthawk. It was a 1993, I believe. Here's a picture of what that bike looked like, although not exactly his bike. And then I had a Versys 650 up until 2019. So I bought that 2016 bike, had that until actually about 2020. And got rid of it around the time of COVID, just because COVID had some everybody was unsure about a lot of things, got rid of that. So then I got to choose what bike I wanted. And like I said, this was not my first choice. What I thought I was gonna choose was the Ninja 1000. So the Ninja 1000 has a lot of things I like. It's very sporty, has a windscreen, it had luggage. To me, luggage was a thing that in my mind really mattered. It had cruise control, it had all the things I thought I needed to go on a trip. And I liked that bike. And it cost a little bit more in insurance than this bike, and that kind of got me thinking about some stuff, and it wasn't the end of the world. But every time I walked by this bike, I kind of liked it. And it appealed to me. And I kept saying, well, it doesn't have luggage, and it doesn't have a windscreen, so therefore it's not what I want. However, I started thinking about that, and when I advise salespeople, when I've trained salespeople in the past, I always tell them that people buy cars and vehicles because they like them. They don't buy them because of a checklist of things. And that was what I was doing with the Ninja 1000. I think the Ninja 1000 is an amazing bike, but it had luggage, it had a windscreen, it had cruise control. All of those things were things that sort of fit a checklist, but they didn't speak to me so much as this bike. And I think when you buy a motorcycle, you have to buy something that you're connected with. And I've solved a few problems with this that I'll be able to tour on, and we'll talk about that right now. So in my mind, if you're gonna tour on a bike, you have to start with something that is both comfortable and has a nice, powerful engine that allows you to take long highway stretches if you need to, but you can also have fun everywhere you need, and you don't get tired of riding it. Now, the first thing that the Ninja 1000 had is it had that big adjustable windshield, and I thought that was something I needed. But I remembered from driving my Versus that sometimes a big windshield and a lot of wind protection can actually make it very hot on a summer day. And there were hot summer days where I didn't always ride it because it was almost too hot when I wore the proper protective gear, even if I had a vented jacket on. So this one, I kind of like the feeling of letting the air get to you. It's a much simpler feeling, and it feels like a true, real motorcycle to me. So that was one thing where if I wanted to tour on this and I needed a windshield, because of the style of this bike, it's very easy to add them that clip on the handlebars and the headlight, and you've got a windshield if you want it. Now, luggage capacity, this one I'm gonna put the rail on here, in part because it works with the center stand I put on, which I'll show you in a second, in part because it has the same style as the original, which I kinda like, and it also gives me an extra spot to stick luggage on. For generations, people would stick luggage right here, and it was all you need. And I've got luggage that we'll do videos on in the future to show you the type of luggage I bought and why I bought it, and some pros and cons of that. But overall, this bike really speaks to me because of a couple main features. So let's talk about them. So when I first bought my Versus, the 2016 Versus, it was the first bike I had with a digital speedometer. It still had a digital but usable tachometer. But one of the things I found about the digital speedometer is you had to read it a little bit more carefully. You couldn't just glance down and see exactly what you were going. So these old style gauges, one of the things I miss about them is if this dial is straight up and down, I'm going 120 kilometers an hour. If it's a hair to the left, it's 100. It's a hair further, it's 80. At a glance, you know exactly what you're going or very close to what you're going. And the same thing with the rev range. These dials are so precise where your tach runs from all the way down here to all the way up there instead of across a bar. Sometimes it's hard to see exactly where your tach is, whereas this one, because there's so much range of motion there, at a glance you can tell if you're at 4,000 or 6,000 or 8,000 RPM. And when you're revving through the gears, knowing your speed and knowing your engine speed at a glance is really good and really nice to have. Now, my Versus didn't have a gear indicator. That came in about a year or so later. And it's one of the things I kind of missed, because although you can tell what gear you're in by the rev range and the speed, as soon as you put the clutch in, the revs drop, and that's harder to tell. So gear indicator is something I really wanted. Traction control is the same thing. I really wanted traction control on a little bit more powerful bike, just to give you that extra measure of safety. Beyond that, I don't need all of the fancy things that you can get on something like the Ninja 1000, which I love and appreciate as a reviewer, but as an owner, I still like the simplicity of a regular motorcycle. Having a fuel gauge, temperature gauge, and a lot of information down here is great. And one of the things I don't like having on a bike is a big, ugly phone or GPS mount. And I have a GPS that I'm going to show you in the future, which fits in perfectly with this bike that isn't a big, ugly thing. So you've got these really clear gauges that draw your attention back to the road rather than down to a TFT display, which I really like. There's a few modifications I put on this bike that are not so retro, and some that just kind of fit in. And I want to show you them now as well. The first modification I'm going to show you is the one that emotionally I'm struggling with the most. This is a retro bike, and you're supposed to enjoy it like a retro bike, but I did put heated grips on. Now, I like this look from Kawasaki here. These are Kawasaki heated grips, so they are factory. What I don't like is the interface. This is something that I want for modern things. My Versus had a sort of shield cover, and I like the way it kept my hands warm, but something like this doesn't have that, and I still like to ride in cooler weather, cooler mornings, cooler evenings. So these are good, but the interface is wrong. Kawasaki should have put 3 little lights on here somewhere to show you high, medium, or low, but instead they did this. So it's blinking 3 times there, and that tells me that they are on the highest level. On a motorcycle, you don't want to have to glance down long enough to watch those 3 beeps while you're driving to now figure it's on. And then you can touch it again, it'll go twice. You can touch it again, it'll go once, and I believe if you hold it, it will turn off. But the point is, that blinking there is something you have to actually watch. It's not something that you can do while you're driving, and it's just a bit of a silly interface. Now, this one doesn't have a TFT display, but Kawasaki should really bring this into their TFT displays as well on those bikes, because it's the same thing on the TFT displays. Instead of showing you what level heating on your TFT display, they don't have that. And this does plug into the factory wiring harness, so it is something that could have been brought into your factory wiring harness, and on a TFT display would have shown. And on here again, just add some lights in there, 3, 2, and 1, like every single car with heated seats, to make us tell what it is at a glance. That would be better. Having said that, this is the one nod I made to a modern bike that I think I want, and I justify it because, hey, old bikes didn't used to have, you know, Brembo brakes or Olin suspension either. This is one thing that I think fits in cleanly with the switchgear, but it is a modern bike. Another accessory I added was the center stand. I've had many bikes with a center stand, even the Versus 650 that I had. It doesn't come with a factory center stand, but I did have one added. I think it was an SW Motec. That one on that bike made it awkward to use the side stand and the center stand together. It was kind of, you had to put the side stand down to put the center stand down. It wasn't a clean fit, and I can see why Kawasaki doesn't do it. However, for chain maintenance, for parking on gravel driveways or less than ideal surfaces, it's really nice to have a center stand. This one's interesting because it has to come outside of the exhaust here, so it does kind of loop over the exhaust. I'll show you a little picture of it a little bit later. Actually, I'm not sure if I can show you a picture in this video just because I have to bounce a bike, but once it's up, it's clean. It goes just underneath here. It does look nice. One interesting thing is I was talking to the technician that put it on, and you do need to add, or they do give you as part of the center stand kit, a little bit longer feeler on the foot pegs. So that must take away some ground clearance for cornering, just the way it sets up there. Not something that's going to bother me. I'm not taking this bike to the track, but certainly for the street, this is going to be more than enough clearance for me. But just something to remember, if you are going to the track with this bike, you probably don't want to have the center stand on, because if they're giving you longer feelers here, it's probably because there's a little bit less ground clearance. Another accessory that I added is something that I think everyone should add to a bike like this. The rumor is that this little skirt here is a little short. This fender here is a little short to keep everything from coming up here. I've been on situations where I've had stones come up at my bike, and I just wanted a radiator guard on here. So this is the black one that you can get from Kawasaki's website. There's also a sort of a silver one with the old style Kawasaki logo. Because this is the SE model where it's black here, the other models are silver here. I wanted to make sure it was all black here. It kind of blends in, so I added that as well. So after telling you why I didn't buy the Ninja 1000 because it was the logical bike that kind of had all these check boxes checked, I just did a video telling you all the logical reasons I bought this. Let's tell you why I really bought it. I bought it because I like it. So the way this gold or yellow paint works, and the way that it has the sparkle and the sunshine, I kind of like that. It stands out. It's something a little different, but it's, you know, traditional style look. I love the gold fork tubes and the gold wheels. Not something I would have chosen if you just told me to design a bike, but the way it looks when it's parked next to other bikes, it always kind of stands out. It's always a little bit unique. I love that it has Brembo brakes. I know that's silly, but I've worked in the auto industry for a long time. Brembo brakes mean something. They're just a performance brake piece, and even if these aren't fully top of the line Brembo brakes, I like them, and I like good quality brakes, and these have that. It's also got the braided steel lines for the brakes, so top to bottom, a top level braking system. You don't have to do any upgrades to get that. And the other thing that's kind of silly is I love the sound of the exhaust. It was a tuned exhaust by Kawasaki. They didn't do that on many bikes. This was the first, the Z900RS was the first bike where they did a tuned exhaust. The rumor is they went through like 20 different variations of this exhaust, and it sounds good. I haven't been able to film it properly with a, what it really sounds like in real life, but it's bassy on idle. It revs well through the gears when you hear it a little bit. It just sounds really, really good, and it's something that I like. Overall riding position was also something I love. It's comfortable for all day, and for the type of riding I do, mostly country roads, that kind of thing, it's perfect. If I need to go highway, I can. So I'm gonna go on and do more videos on this bike, and I'm going to tell you about what I like and what I don't like. There will be some things I don't like because no motorcycle is perfect. But I am going to do a trip on this, and I'm going to do it without wind protection. So we'll talk about, do you need that on the highway? How is it? How bad is it? I've got a good helmet, so that's going to be something that I think really matters when you don't have the wind protection. We'll talk about my luggage. We'll talk about a GPS I bought. We're going to talk about the one extra accessory, like I said, that silver grab rail here that's on the back. It's not here yet, but it'll be put on this bike before I take it on from the dealership here. But if you have questions about this bike, let me know. If you own one, tell me your thoughts on it. Let's just create a little community here, and I'll create a whole playlist. I'm going to dump the previous videos I did on this bike, some of which I filmed before I even realized I was going to buy this bike, because in my head, I was going to buy something with luggage like my previous Versus 650. But like I said, I've solved that problem. I'm super excited about this thing and being able to ride it. And we're going to follow everything through break-in period, servicing. If anything goes wrong, I'm going to put on video the entire ownership experience. I'm going to document here on this channel. So if you're interested in this bike, or if you just want to follow along, and we'll do some fun stuff with it as well and make some fun videos on that, that's what we're going to be doing on this channel through this playlist. And if you don't know who I am, I review these things every day here at Jim Gilbert's PowerSports. So whether it's Vespa, Piaggio, Pedigo e-bikes, the entire Kawasaki line, I get to do that here along with a whole bunch of vehicles. So the whole Wheels and Deals, they've got all kinds of vehicles here, including electric vehicles. That's all on this channel, but I'll make sure I make a playlist specifically for this bike so we can follow that along as well. And I'm hoping to earn your subscription, hoping to do some fun stuff with this that'll be worth watching. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, and yeah, we'll go from there. Thanks for watching.